Right, I'm going to talk about Labour again now, but a different topic, because Lisa Nandy, she's said that one day society will be ashamed of the trans debate. This is a shadow cabinet member. She'll be in government if Sir Keir Starmer's elected. She says that we should be ashamed of the trans debate, and she says the argument shouldn't be reduced to bodily parts. Now, Lisa has said some controversial things on the trans debate in the past, which have drawn criticism from high places, because she was criticised by, or she has criticised, the author JK Rowling, saying that actually JK breaks her heart after the Harry Potter star remarked that women don't trust Labour given its lenient stance on transgender inclusivity, that is, self-identification and all of these other subjects which over recent years have blown up massively. Well, joining me to discuss this is Katy Jon Went, a diversity and inclusion facilitator even. I couldn't say that there, Katy. Thank you for your company. Katy, do you think actually in a few years' time we will be looking back and say, oh, do you know what, actually that Lisa Nandy shot that right?
Well, that's an interesting way to put it. I hope that is the case, but I hope it won't be just about one side winning or the other on this. I mean, neither Lisa Nandy nor JK Rowling speak for all women, and for each of them to say how all women should think is a little difficult. You know, but Lisa Nandy does get herself into hot water a little bit, because if you take the kind of the trans activist line, it doesn't leave much room for kind of nuance or dialogue around this. So this is one of the difficult positions. And I hope that in the future, 10 years from now, that we're all looking at kind of rights that are based on human rights, on person-based rights, and it's not based on a sex v gender culture war that still continues.
Yes, because, I mean, Katy, the one thing that I think, if memory serves, the one moment when I think Lisa Nandy perhaps lost certain sections of at least voters that formerly voted for Labour would be on when she said that actually trans women should be in prisons, in female prisons. Now, it's obviously a highly contentious issue, and we've seen examples in Scotland especially where trans women who self-identify have been placed into female prisons. I'm wondering, do you think in government the Labour Party's position is going to change on that purely for electoral reasons?
I don't think they will amend the prison rules, because the prison rules have already kind of stepped back towards risk assessment over and above kind of gender identity. There's always been in place, because I actually spent a lot of time working with the prisons, not directly on the gender issue, on a completely different issue many, many years ago. But it meant that I've been to 30 or 40 prisons around the UK, and their prison governors would tell me, oh, we've got a couple of trans people here, they're in the male wing, or we've got a couple of trans people here, they're in the female wing, or we have taken these precautions. And pre-2011, all these prisons would make their own decisions based on common sense. Then rules came in, partly because there was a spate of kind of trans female suicides in the male wings, and they were considered to be people at risk to themselves. So some of that meant that they erred on the side of inclusion rather than the side of caution when they started putting more into the female wing. Now it's gone backwards. Now the rule is nobody with an intact male body will be in a female prison, which is one way of reducing it to body parts, but certainly a very safe way of reducing it to body parts. And yes, nobody with a history of sexual violence should be in a place where there are victims of sexual violence in that sense. Obviously, there are in a male prison too. But you've got to protect both trans women, both from themselves and from male inmates, but you've also got to protect women in women's prisons from potential assault and also feeling uncomfortable in those situations. And there are solutions. There are prisons in the UK where they actually have a transgender wing. So more of that could be accommodated in that sense. So I do think one of the solutions we might look back upon in 10 years' time is more third spaces, more solutions that satisfy everyone. We should be looking for win-wins in that sense. And that means having male loos, female loos, and single-use cubicles that are for anyone individually, that where gender doesn't matter along the line of disability loos. Therefore, you would solve the loos questions. You can solve prison questions. We are required in Law and Equality Act to solve for everyone. And so that is one of the ways to do it. But the last 6 years, no one's been talking because everyone's been fighting. And,
Yeah,
I'll put
but
my
I think, Katie, though, that I guess the problem
animosity.
for a lot of women is that they're listening to Lisa Nandy and others make those arguments, and they're thinking, well, in prisons, when you think of female prisons, you think of some of society's most vulnerable women, right? You think of people who have perhaps had a pretty tough lot in life, and actually adding in what could be, dare I say, a sexual predator into the environment, well, it seems completely unconscionable to many people. So you can understand the strong sense of feeling on that side of the argument, and why perhaps in 10 years' time JK Rowling won't be sat having a pint with Lisa Nandy, for example.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I don't think the prison policy is going to go forward again. I think it's going to stay where it is now. They have got a compromise that's kind of practical, sensible, and errs on risk assessment, not gender identity. And I think that is certainly the way to go where there is possibility of risk. And I think we have to be willing to talk about sex and gender separately in order to look at those risks. We have to be able to designate a crime committed by someone who is still an intact male body, however they identify, as a male crime. In the sense, otherwise we will not actually be able to understand the risk assessments. And in order to get the best data on that, we've got to be willing to say sex is sex, gender is gender, women are women, trans are trans, and to be able to accommodate places in society for all. And that's not running roughshod over either women then or gender identity. It's finding a way to recognize that they are, to a degree, two separate things. And the way the law works and the way the Equality Act works is it recognizes separate things. And we need to get back to that consensus in society where we kind of accommodate each other for coexistence rather than perpetuate the conflict. We've seen what happens with conflicts around the world if you don't come back to the table.